The social Shariah. Man by nature likes to live in a community. The reason that the Almighty has given him this nature is that He does not create human beings in the prime of their youth. Similarly, He does not generally make them die in their youth without making them pass through old age. On the contrary, a human being is created as a feeble child in the womb of the mother. He enters this world to be welcomed by her loving affection and then grows being nurtured and nourished by others. At first, he drags himself and then crawls on his knees before he is able to stand on his feet with great difficulty. Even after this state, he needs the help of others at every step. Finally, after going through various phases of childhood and adolescence, he enters the prime of his youth at the age of 15 or 16. This blooming period of his life also does not last more than 20 to 30 years. Then comes old age, and in spite of many a time attaining great heights in intellect in his prime, he once again has to turn to others to fulfill his needs like a frail child for the rest of his life. This life cycle of man entails that he live in a social setup. As a man or a woman, from the very beginning of life, this affinity towards a social setup is fully found in his being. He does not need to find this tendency in his external world. When he enters this world, he brings with him all his internal urges and inner motivations and uses them to fulfill his needs wherever and whenever required. The history of mankind shows that owing to this very aspect of human nature, when Adam, the founder of the human dynasty, was sent in this world, he was blessed with a wife from his own species, someone who was meant to be his companion. From these two sprang many men and women as their progeny. Gradually, a family, a tribe, and finally a state came into existence. The resultant social setup afforded man the opportunity to realize his hidden potentials and urges. It is in consideration of all these facts and to firmly establish a society on these fundamentals that an everlasting bond between the spouses is made essential in the religion of the prophets. If the whole life of a human being, from childhood to old age, is kept in consideration, sense and reason endorse that to fulfill his physical, psychological, and social needs, an everlasting marriage bond between the spouses is essential. Consequently, the Almighty has given a social Shariah to man through His prophets in order to guide human intellect in certain affairs regarding the society which is established on this basis. Following are the details of this Shariah of God. 1. Marriage. The only legitimate way for a man and a woman to satisfy their sexual desire from one another is marriage. Marriage is an open declaration of a contract by a man and a woman to live permanently as husband and wife. It is declared in the presence of people through a responsible personality with great solemnity and gravity after he delivers a sermon to counsel and guide them. Women too, like men, have the right to take a decision for their marriage and freely exercise their opinion within the bounds and limits set by the Almighty. Without their consent, they cannot be forced to marry. 2. Relations prohibited for marriage. It is prohibited to marry one's mother, daughter, sister, paternal and maternal aunts, and the daughters of one's brother or sister. The Almighty wants the gaze of a son for his mother, of a father for his daughter, of a brother for his sister, of a nephew for both his maternal and paternal aunts, of a maternal and paternal uncle for their nieces, to remain free from the slightest trace of sexual leaning. The reason is that any sort of sexual proclivity between these relations is devastating for human dignity and honor, and is totally against the unadulterated state of chastity and purity that distinguishes man from animals. Foster relations too have a similar sanctity as the real ones. Thus, every relation prohibited through lineage for marriage is prohibited on the basis of fosterage too. After lineage and fosterage are relationships which emerge on the basis of marriage itself. Such is the obviousness of the sanctity of these relationships in human nature that no reasoning is required. Consequently, the daughter-in-law is prohibited for the father-in-law, and the mother-in-law, the wife's daughter, the wife's sister, and both nieces and both aunts, both maternal and paternal, of the wife, are all prohibited for the husband. However, since these relationships are formed through the husband and the wife, a degree of weakness is found in them. Owing to this reason, the Quran has imposed the following three conditions on the prohibition of these relationships. Firstly, only the daughter of that wife is prohibited with whom one has had conjugal contact. Secondly, only the wife of a real son is prohibited. Thirdly, the sister of a wife and her two nieces and aunts are only prohibited if the wife is in wedlock with the husband. Besides these relations, marriage with a stepmother and with a woman who is married to someone is also prohibited. 3. Requisites of nikah. A nikah should be conducted through wealth, which here means dower. The Quran emphasizes that the Almighty has ordained this payment as an essential prerequisite of marriage. When a man and a woman pledge to remain in a permanent relationship through marriage, it is the man who has always taken the financial responsibility of the woman he is bringing home. The dower is nothing but a symbolic expression of this responsibility. The Shariah has not fixed any amount for the dower. It has left it to the norms and traditions of a society. Consequently, it can be fixed according to the social status of the woman and the financial status of the man who is to become her husband. Chastity is also a requisite of marriage. No adulterer has the right to marry a chaste woman, and no adulteress has the right to marry a chaste man, except if the matter has not gone to the court and the two purify themselves of this sin by sincere repentance. Similar is the case of polytheism. Just as it cannot be acceptable in any way that a husband or a wife commit marital unfaithfulness, similarly, it is totally unacceptable for a Muslim that someone else besides the Almighty be worshipped in his house. In fact, this is more detestable a sin than sleeping with some other woman. In the case of the Jews and Christians, the Almighty was lenient enough to Muslims to allow marriage with their chaste women. This was because Jews and Christians, in spite of being deeply incriminated with the filth of polytheism, are basically monotheists. 4. Rights and obligations of the spouses. A family is like a small state. Just as every state requires a ruler for its establishment and survival, this small state also requires someone to take charge of its helm. Either the husband could have been bestowed with this responsibility or the wife. The Quran informs us that because of certain physical and temperamental abilities, the husband has been entrusted with this responsibility, and as an essential result of this, has required two things from the wives. Firstly, they should be obedient and adaptable to their husbands, and secondly, they should keep the secrets of their husbands and protect their honor and integrity. If a wife becomes inclined to disrupt the discipline of the house by challenging this status of the husband, the Almighty has said that three options can be adopted by him to save the family. First, a wife should be urged to mend her ways. The word used by the Quran is wa'aza, which means that she can be admonished and also scolded to some extent in this regard. Second, intimate marital relations with her should be suspended in order to communicate to her that if she does not mend her ways, she might have to face severe repercussions. Third, she should be punished physically. This punishment should only be as much as a teacher gives to a student or what a father gives to his children. A gradual sequence should be adopted in exercising these three options. In other words, the second step after the first and the third after the second should only be adopted if the husband is convinced that there is no other option but to go on to the next step. These measures point to the utmost limit to which a husband can go regarding admonishing his wife. If the wife mends her ways through these measures, a husband should not look for revenge and vengeance. If a person dislikes his wife, he should not subject her to harsh treatment in order to recover any wealth or property that he has gifted her. Such an attitude can only be accepted if the wife is guilty of open sexual transgression. If the wife is not guilty of such behavior and is living as a faithful and obedient lady, leading a virtuous life, it is totally against justice and decency for the husband to harass her merely because he dislikes her. No doubt, if a wife shows moral misconduct, then this is a detestable thing, but no husband is allowed to deprive her the rights of a decent living because he does not like her looks or because her temperament is different from his. A husband who does not like his wife should deal with her in accordance with the norms of justice and equity, graciousness and decency, reason and human nature. 5. Polygamy. As per the norms of human nature, the real benefits and advantages of the institution of family manifest themselves in a monogamous family. It is basically social, psychological, political and cultural needs because of which the tradition of polygamy has existed in every society, whether in a pronounced or mild form. To cater for these very needs, the Almighty never forbade this practice in the Shariah He revealed in various periods of time. However, when the Quran urged the Muslims to make use of this practice to solve a social problem that had arisen in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, it made it conditional upon two things. First, even for as noble an objective as the welfare of orphans, a person cannot marry more than 4 wives. Second, if a person is not able to deal justly with his wives, he should not marry more than one, because justice is a value that has to be maintained at all costs and cannot be sacrificed even for such a noble cause. However, this justice does not mean equality in a person's inner inclination and his outer behavior. Such justice is not possible for any person, and even if someone wants to do such justice, he cannot do so. This is because a person has no power over his heart in such affairs. Therefore, in this regard, it is enough for a husband to not completely lean towards one of the wives and show indifference to the other, as if she had no husband. Whether marriage has taken place to protect the rights of the orphans or for some other purpose, payment of the dower and discharging of justice are the rights of a woman, and the former must be given with the willingness of the heart. However, if it is fair that a husband may show indifference to his wife or even think of parting ways with her because of her insistence to be treated equally with other wives, it is all right if a husband and a wife settle for a compromise. 6. Limits of sexual intimacy. A husband and wife are prohibited to have sexual intercourse when the wife is passing through her menstrual or puerperal cycle. This prohibition is till the blood stops, and once it stops, this prohibition is lifted. However, the desirable way in this regard is to have intercourse after she has taken a bath, and to have it necessarily in the way prescribed by God. 7. Ila. It is not allowed to sever sexual relations from one's wife without a valid reason. So much so, if a person swears such an oath, he must break it. A period of 4 months has been fixed for it, after which a husband must decide to either resume his marital relationship or to divorce her. 8. Zihar. If a person is unseemly enough to regard his wife as his mother, or likens some limb of his wife to that of his mother, then such an utterance does not make the wife his mother, and neither is she endowed with the sanctity a mother has. Consequently, such an utterance neither breaks marital ties, nor does a wife become prohibited for a person like his mother. However, a person who utters these words shall not be allowed to go scot-free. Such loose talk gravely affects social life, and thus it is essential that such a person be punished for this unbecoming behavior, so that he is careful in future, and others also learn a lesson from this. Consequently, it is decreed by the Almighty that he must atone his sin before going near his wife in the following manner. A slave woman or a slave man must be set free. If slaves are not available, he should fast consecutively for 2 months. If this is also not possible, he should feed 60 indigent persons. 9.